Nigel Farage.
What happened at today's PMQs not only shows that the Speaker Lindsay Hoyle is completely out of control of the chamber, but more importantly, it shows just how much contempt the MPs sitting in that chamber have for people like you that voted for Brexit and care about immigration. Take a listen to Nigel Farage attempting to ask a question but being drowned out by rude MPs who don't think he deserves to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let him speak.
Some of you want to get in a little later. If this takes forever, you won't get in. Nigel Farage. Thank you.
Attempt to.
The main reason this country wisely voted for Brexit back in 2016, and that included millions of Labour supporters, is because we wanted to take back control of our borders.
They still won't let him speak.
To decide who comes and settles in our country. Does the Prime Minister understand?
They're just talking over him.
Today is even greater than it was back in 2016, and that we demand, the country demands, that you say to the French President, will you shut up?
So rude.
French President, we will not accept undocumented males across the English Channel, and that you are not dictated to by an increasingly arrogant, anti-Brexit French president.
Now, I'm not sure you'll have managed to hear much of what Nigel Farage was saying there, but he was asking a very important question about how Brexiteers feel at the moment, nearly a decade on from the referendum. This issue of immigration is, if anything, even more important to them now than it was at the time of the referendum. And he's asking Keir Starmer to actually stand up to the French Prime Minister Macron, who has taken 771 million quid of your taxpayer money and done nothing with it. The percentage of small boat crossings that the French are preventing each year is actually going down. Okay? They're not succeeding at all. They're spending our money on fun buggies that they get to drive around the beaches whilst they watch the boats set off and head off to England. They even provide buoyancy aids, life jackets for these people. That's probably where your money is going. So it was a completely valid question. But as you can see, the other MPs there, they sneered and they jeered at Nigel and they wouldn't even let him speak. They didn't even have the basic respect to let the man speak and respond afterwards. We all know that PMQs come with some heckling, but there are standards about letting people actually say what they have to say, even if you don't agree with it. The fact that the MPs in that chamber on both benches, on both sides, aside from the Reform Party, just laughed and sneered as if it was some kind of crazy question that Nigel Farage is asking, they are completely out of touch, because the vast majority of actual members of the public, not MPs, would have resonated with that question. Now, Lee Anderson quite rightly pulled the speaker up on this and raised a point of order. Yes, the speaker did intervene once at the beginning, but then the MPs were still allowed to continue heckling Farage and interrupting him. So let's see what Lee had to say.
Order, Lee Anderson.
Mr. Speaker, during PMQs today, the Honourable Member for Clacton asked what I thought was quite a reasonable question, because I knew what the question was going to be, but during PMQs, I couldn't hear a single word. I'm sure people in this chamber couldn't, because people like the Honourable Member for Dewsbury behind me never shut up all the way through. The Honourable Member for Clacton was trying to ask a reasonable question. We do not subscribe to this sort of dog whistle politics in Reform UK.
Still just taking the mick.
So, Mr. Speaker, could you please give us advice on how to stop this behaviour in the future?
What I would say is I think Mr Farage is capable of dealing with his own battles, that we've seen on many occasions. What I would say is, look, it is about respect.
Not adequate.
It is about tolerance that we should show to each other, because what we do in here is reflected outside. So please, let us show common sense but respect for each other.
So a little little bit of a reasonable answer towards the end there from the Speaker, saying how we need to be respectful towards one another, but no admission of his failure to control the chamber whilst Nigel Farage was trying to speak, and kind of saying, oh, well, Nigel Farage can deal with his own problems at the beginning of his answer to Lee Anderson. Pretty pathetic, I think. And let's take a look at what Richard Tice had to say about this whole hoo-ha at PMQ, speaking to Martin Daubney on GB News earlier.
Richard Tice, you were sat there next to Nigel Farage. First of all, what was the question?
So the question was that millions of people voted for Brexit. We want to take back control of our borders, but that Nigel was saying we don't want tens of thousands of undocumented illegal migrants crossing the Channel. And could he take that message to the increasingly arrogant French president? But it was hard to get the words out because it was complete chaos. You expect it from the opposition, but what came today was a concerted attempt from two sides behind Nigel's shoulder. I was right next to Nigel. I could barely hear what he was saying. And it was relentless from the member for Dewsbury. And so, that's why Lee Anderson said, can you please shut up? And it was pretty extraordinary. It's the place of other people to give comment about the Speaker. That's not for MPs. But I also do think there is a genuine concern from many people about what is happening to the microphones when Nigel gives a question, because they're supposed to be cut off for everybody else. And there is increasing evidence that may not have happened today, and we will look and see whether or not actually that's been happening in the past, because this is not the first time.
Now, in the Brussels and the Strasbourg chambers, of course, they used to cut Nigel's microphone off the moment he'd gone over his time limit, but he got a fair crack of the whip and there was no other microphones turned on. Are you saying that cacophony of noise from all the other microphones is all going into one sound output, and so you simply can't understand what's being said by the person asking the question?
We are looking at there is genuine concern about what's going on with the microphones. It may be because it was directly behind Nigel that gentleman's voice was going straight into Nigel's microphone. So let's wait and see. But it was pretty chaotic. I mean, as Olivia says, it's always noisy in the chamber at PMQs. But whenever Nigel asks a question, it seems to be particularly noisy.
So there we go. Maybe something is going on with the microphones. It might be a complete mistake, or it might be a concerted effort to silence Nigel Farage. We'll see if they manage to get any answers on that. But to me, from listening to that clip of Nigel trying to ask a question, it sounds like either his microphone is not on properly, or microphones in other places in the chamber are also turned on at the same time when they should have been cut so that we can hear Nigel's question clearly. But who knows? And you notice both Richard Tice and Lee Anderson, the clips we've just looked at, mentioning the member for Dewsbury. Who is that? That is Iqbal Mohammed, one of the MPs that you will often see sitting in that row of independent pro-Gaza MPs behind the Reform Party on the opposition benches. Completely appalling behaviour, constantly talking over Nigel Farage. I know that these two guys have completely different politics and completely disagree with each other, but have a bit of common decency and respect and let the man speak. These are the sectarian MPs that we are letting into Parliament. Let's take a look at a few tweets. A lot of people pretty angry with the Speaker, putting the onus on him. So Chris Rose says, whether you like him or not, Nigel Farage should be able to speak without the heckling. This made Parliament look shameful and juvenile. The Speaker failed to do his duty again. Lee Harris says this is an absolute disgrace. Listen to the rude, out-of-touch rabble of entitled MPs at PMQ shouting down Farage. I can barely hear the question. Lindsay Hoyle has completely lost control. Unacceptable, says Lee Harris. And Ben said this, which I think is a pretty good prediction, saying this clip will age just like the one from the EU Parliament where they laughed at Farage. He returned years later after Brexit and declared, "You're not laughing now. They never learn. Low-grade people." Yeah, that's why I showed you guys this clip, because I really do think it shows Not just that the Speaker is out of control, not just that MPs are rude and disrespectful to each other at times, but most importantly, it shows that the people in that chamber are completely out of touch with reality. And years down the line, they are going to look so stupid for laughing at Nigel Farage. They laughed at Nigel Farage in the chamber when he said the words two-tier policing. They all laughed at him like, two-tier policing? You conspiracy theorists for suggesting that there is two-tier policing in this country. But those of us who are normal citizens of this country, not MPs living in the Westminster bubble, we know that there are blatant cases of two-tier policing every single day, and this absolutely infuriates the nation. But those people sat in that parliament, they just don't get it, do they? Anyway, there we go. That is the drama from today's PMQs. Maybe not quite as crazy as Rachel Reeves crying her eyes out last week, but still pretty spicy. So thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Chloe Dobbs. Make sure to subscribe to Reasoned if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any more videos. See you next time.